Good evening, I'm Michael and you're watching Kini News, the show that brings you today's biggest stories. The economy took a big hit in April due to the MCO, but Finance Minister Tengku Zafrul Abdul Aziz said the economy had rebounded since the easing of restrictions with the RMCO. However, Malaysia's Q2 GDP performance is still the worst in the ASEAN region so far. Putrajaya's move to enforce the movement control order to curb the spread of COVID-19 has had a massive impact on economic activity. But how big of an impact? Malaysia's gross domestic product for the second quarter is down by negative 17.1% compared to the same period last year. This is the first time quarterly GDP change is in the negative territory since Q3 2009, which was at negative 1.1%. Bank Negara said on a quarter-on-quarter seasonally adjusted basis, the economy contracted by 16.5%. According to Reuters, this is the worst slump since the Asia financial crisis, which saw the GDP shrink by 11.2% in Q4 1998. Meanwhile, the central bank predicted that Malaysia's economic growth will be between negative 3.5% and negative 5.5% for 2020. This is down from its economic growth forecast in April of between negative 2% and 0.5%. Bank Negara said the economy was expected to rebound in 2021 at rates of 5.5% to 8%. According to the Department of Statistics, all components of the economy except agriculture registered negative growth. The hardest hit was construction at negative 44.5%. Private consumption fell by 18.5%, while government expenditure grew by 2.3%. The current account balance was still in surplus at 7.6 billion ringgit, down from 9.5 billion ringgit during the previous quarter. Don't expect to win any fashion awards when you're out and about with your pink patient under surveillance wristband, but do expect to face jail time and a hefty fine. Some people like showing off their watches, others their handbags, but a 72-year-old woman decided to show off a pink patient under surveillance wristband, and now she has to pay the price. According to national news agency Bernama, the senior citizen was sentenced to 1 day in jail and fined 8,000 ringgit by the Ipoh Magistrates Court. The magistrate also ordered the accused to serve 6 months in jail if she fails to settle the fine. Nur Emah Muhammad Hashim was caught eating at a restaurant while under the COVID-19 house surveillance order in Meru Jaya on July 6th, after returning to the country on July 4th. She caught the nation's attention when a photograph of her eating at a restaurant publicly while wearing the pink wristband went viral on social media. She first tested negative for COVID-19. However, Sina Harian reported that she tested positive in the second test on the 13th day of her quarantine period. Those who undergo mandatory home quarantine have to remain at home for 14 days and take a second COVID test on the 13th day. The government is taking stern action against those who defy the home quarantine order. Yesterday, the owner of Nasi Kandar Saleh in Jitra Kedah, who is linked to the Sivaganga cluster, was sentenced to 5 months jail for defying his home quarantine order under Section 15(1) of the Prevention and Control of Infectious Diseases Act 1988. He was also fined 12,000 ringgit. Another day, another new cluster, also in Kedah. Here's the country's latest COVID-19 situation. Malaysia reported another new cluster today, also in Kedah, and 20 new COVID-19 cases. Recently, Kedah saw the emergence of 2 other clusters, namely the Sivaganga cluster and the Tawa cluster. Health Ministry Director General Dr. Norisham Abdullah said 7 of the 20 new cases were imported, while the remaining 13 were locally transmitted. One local case came from the New Muda cluster in Kuala Muda, bringing the size of the cluster to 2 cases so far. The index case for the Muda cluster was a police officer, and the new case reported today is his colleague. Meanwhile, the Tawa cluster saw 11 new cases, of which 10 were in Kedah and 1 in Penang. The Tawa cluster was first reported yesterday. The index case for the cluster, case 9113, had attended a funeral of a family member on July 31st and August 1st, and later developed symptoms before testing positive on August 11th. All the cases you just heard about, it's only possible because of testing, and testing costs a lot of money. The government revealed just how much it's spent so far. 96 million ringgit, that's how much the government has spent on reagents and test kits to conduct COVID-19 tests so far. Health Minister Dr. Adham Baba said that the 96 million bill is inclusive of testing carried out since January 2020, when the coronavirus was first identified. The minister revealed this in a parliamentary written reply dated yesterday to a question from Kepong MP Lim Lip Eng on the cost and volume of COVID-19 testing carried out by the government. To date, 55 public and private facilities conduct COVID-19 tests. The testing involves reverse transcription, polymerase chain reaction (RT-PCR) and rapid anti-agent test kits (RT-KAG). The minister said up to August 6, over 1.8 million COVID-19 tests have been carried out, involving 1.74 million RT-PCR and 125,000 RT-KAG tests. To Lim's question on the number of foreigners tested and action taken for those found to be infected, Adnan said 72,736 non-citizens were tested up to August 6. Foreigners comprise 7.2% of all individuals tested in the country. Did local authorities turn a blind eye on gambling dens in Bandar Baru, Sungai Buloh? The MACC hopes to answer that question and bring those responsible to face the law. Following the expose on gambling dens and illegal businesses in Sungai Buloh recently, the MACC has nabbed a director in the Shah Alam City Council's Enforcement Division on suspicion of involvement in a protection racket. According to Bernama, the arrest was confirmed by MACC Deputy Chief Commissioner of Operations Ahmad Kusairi Yahya. Meanwhile, Berita Harian reported that remand proceedings against the suspect will be conducted at the Putrajaya Magistrates Court tomorrow. The MACC arrested several MBSA officers recently following allegations that illegal businesses were thriving in the Bandar Baru Sungai Buloh area. The allegations were most prominently raised by burger stall operator and activist Muhammad Asri Hamid, better known as Asri Janggut. Asri claimed that the authorities appeared to turn a blind eye on gambling dens while penalising him for operating a burger stall. Former Prime Minister Najib Abdul Razak was hoping to be acquitted and discharged in the 1MDB audit report case, but the court has dismissed his application. Former Prime Minister Najib Abdul Razak's application to strike out the charge of tampering with the One Malaysia Development Berhad 1MDB final audit report has been dismissed by the Kuala Lumpur High Court. Judge Muhammad Zaini Mazlan said he made the decision to dismiss the application after finding that the charge against Najib was not misleading, as alleged by the former UMNO president. The judge added that the grounds given by Najib should only be considered at the end of the prosecution case, and it would be premature for the court to consider the grounds to strike out the charge at this stage. According to Najib, the charge of tampering with the 1MDB audit report was groundless and oppressive, as he applied to be acquitted and discharged. The Pekan MP is on trial for using his position to order amendments to the final audit report that had already been finalised by the Auditor General before it was finalised again and presented before the Public Accounts Committee to avoid any action being taken against him. Najib is charged under Section 23(1) of the MACC Act, which provides a jail term of up to 20 years and a fine of no less than 5 times the amount of gratification or 10,000 ringgit, whichever is higher. Meanwhile, former 1MDB Chief Executive Officer Arul Kandasamy is charged with abetting Najib in making amendments to the report to protect the former Premier. Coming up next, can you catch COVID-19 from food? The WHO says people need not worry about catching COVID-19 from food or packaging. The World Health Organization said on Thursday it saw no evidence of coronavirus being spread by food or packaging and urged people not to be afraid of the virus entering the food chain. This comes after 2 cities in China said they had found traces of the coronavirus in imported frozen chicken wings from Brazil and outer packaging of frozen Ecuadorian shrimp, raising fears that contaminated food shipments might cause a new outbreak. WHO Head of Emergencies Program Mike Ryan told a briefing in Geneva that people should not fear food or food packaging or processing or delivery of food, as there is no evidence that food or the food chain is participating in transmission of the virus. Brazil's Agriculture Ministry said in a statement that it was seeking clarification on the Chinese findings. Ecuador's Production Ministry told Reuters that the country maintains strict protocols and cannot be held responsible for what happens to goods after they leave the country. More than 20 million people have been reported to be infected by the novel coronavirus globally, and almost 750,000 have died, according to a Reuters tally. The WHO urged countries now that are striking bilateral deals for vaccines not to abandon multilateral efforts, since vaccinating pockets will still leave the world vulnerable. Russian President Vladimir Putin said on Tuesday that Russia had become the first country to grant regulatory approval to a COVID-19 vaccine after less than 2 months of human testing. It's a move Moscow likened to its success in the Cold War-era space race. Moscow's decision to grant approval before then has raised concerns among some experts. Only about 10% of clinical trials are successful, and some scientists fear Moscow may be putting national prestige before safety. The WHO said it does not have enough information to make a judgment on the expanded use of the Russian vaccine. 4 amateur models took off their masks to catwalk on the streets of Beijing, but there's a catch to the story. 4 famous amateur model grandmothers took off their masks during a saunter down the streets of Beijing on Thursday to demonstrate life returning to normal as the COVID-19 pandemic eases.
If you're always afraid of death and aging, your life is grey. You need to face aging because you cannot go against natural law. You are in fact older, with wrinkles. You don't have too much energy, or you get out of shape. But this is something you can't go against, so you need to face it with positivity.
These stylish grannies, as they call themselves in Mandarin, turned heads as they walked in figure-hugging dresses down a street like a catwalk in the city. The group of 4 women who met during a modeling training course after retiring 20 years ago became an internet sensation in China last year. A 15-second video of them walking in Sanlitun, one of Beijing's busiest shopping districts, wearing traditional dresses and oversized dangling fringe earrings, was viewed over 50 million times in a day, according to local media. Since then, the group, all aged over 60, have enjoyed dressing up and performing in videos on short video platform Douyin for likes. Are you a fan of Fortnite? Well, I hope you've already installed it on your phone because, well, let's find out why. Gamers eager to play the mobile version of Fortnite won't be able to get it from major app stores, at least for now. The game's maker is locked in a feud with both Apple and Google. Apple kicked the game from its App Store on Thursday, and Google followed suit by pulling it from its Play Store shortly after. And now Epic Games, the maker of Fortnite, is taking both companies to court over its removal from their platforms. The fight over Fortnite stems from Epic Games rolling out a direct payment feature hours earlier. It lets players buy V-Bucks, Fortnite's real money currency, directly from Epic, which tiptoes around Apple and Google's own payment systems. In Apple's case, it also bypasses a fee of up to 30%. The two companies say it all violates their guidelines and gave Fortnite the boot. Epic's lawsuit challenges their rules in targeting Apple. It wrote that, quote, Apple has become what it once railed against, the behemoth seeking to control markets, block competition, and stifle innovation. On social media, Epic rallied supporters for its cause with the hashtag #FreeFortnite in a video parodying Apple's famous 1984 television ad. Apple said in a statement that its in-app payment guidelines, quote, create a level playing field for all developers and make the store safe for all users. Analysts believe games are the biggest contributor to spending inside the App Store, the largest component of Apple's services segment, which brought in over $46 billion last year. Apple and Google were among the major American technology companies to come under anti-competition scrutiny in a hearing with US lawmakers last month. A Google spokesperson declined to comment when asked by Reuters about Epic's lawsuit. And that is all for me today. For more stories, you can go to KiniTV.com. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube and Facebook for the latest news updates. I'll be back with more next week, same time, same place. I'm Prasad Michael. Thank you for watching.